Recording in progress.
Ay, hello.
Yeah, put me in the interpretation channel.
And can you like give me like some code when I need to start the talking?
Shit, hindi siya.
Recording stopped.
Interpretation booth. Walang sa interpretation booth si ano.
I will just wants to remind you that please keep your audio in the silent mode during the presentation. And then if you have any question, you can type it your question or your comment in the Q&A chat box in the here. And then we are going to have as well the Bahasa Indonesia interpretation. So if you are comfortable listening the webinar in Bahasa, you can go to the channel in Bahasa. Maybe I can explain it in Bahasa Indonesia. Jadi nanti kalau misalnya teman-teman mau mendengarkan dalam bahasa Indonesia, kita menyediakan terjemahan dalam bahasa Indonesia. Jadi teman-teman bisa langsung pergi ke channel interpretasi dalam bahasa Indonesia. Dan juga kalau misalnya teman-teman ada pertanyaan atau komen, teman-teman bisa langsung tulis di chat box-nya ya. Nanti akan dibahas waktu sesi. Okay. So let's wait for like some more participants to join us today. And then maybe our friends can show like our house rules, if there's any. And also, yeah, we are also like doing the live broadcast in Facebook of in APR and Facebook page. You can help us with sharing the broadcast in your social media. And welcome to the People's Fightback on debt crisis and stagflation in Asia Pacific webinar. So this webinar initiated by the People Over Profit and Asia Pacific Research Network and International League of People Struggles and Reality of Aid Asia Pacific. So this is now 8 p.m. here in Manila. So while it is 5 p.m. in Islamabad and 3 p.m. in Lebanon. So first of all, one of the organizers of this webinar, the APRN, has launched a call to support the victims of the massive flooding in Pakistan, where thousands have died and many more have been displaced and dislocated. Please get in touch with APRN if you want to help the affected people in Pakistan. We have invited today speakers from Kenya, Pakistan, and the Philippines to help us explore the pressing issues of debt and inflation that is causing massive problems for the working people across Asia Pacific and the rest of the world. I'm Hani Christie from Beranda Perempuan Indonesia, and I'm pleased to be hosting the webinar this evening. So for Bahasa interpretation, kindly kindly click the interpretation button in your respective Zoom accounts, and we are all excited to hear the sharing from Masum, Elmer, Wali, and Caroline. So untuk terjemahan dalam bahasa Indonesia bisa langsung masuk ke interpretasi dalam bahasa Indonesia ya. So let's get straight to it. So today we have Masum here to discuss the debt and stagflation situation in Asia Pacific. Jahangir Hassan Masum is the chairperson of the Reality of Aid Asia Pacific, or ROAAP. And Masum, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hani. Good afternoon from Dhaka. I think after a long time, we are talking about a word that is called stagflation. We have been talking on debt crisis for a long time. So basically in 1970, the world has seen the last global stagflation. And after 12 years of that stagflation, the world had seen also the last global recession in 1982. So that means that stagflation is an alarming situation. Usually, this word means stagnant economy and hyperinflation. Of course, the debt crisis is an issue for a longer time. And the problem for our government is that often they try to hide many things or their failures under the stagflation, recession, or debt. Why? Because why debt basically starts? We have to know that, no? Because debt is basically accumulation of budget deficit over longer times. So that means the poor economic management, corruption, economic bailouts, this kind of things, basically, if government practices, then you are getting to bound in the debt crisis. Stagflation has sometimes basically COVID is basically a real problem for that. We have seen what is stagflation during the COVID time. And some symptoms, if we see about the stagflation, is like price is increasing, people are not buying due to shortage of money, people are losing their jobs because supply chain or demand chain is breaking or not in an optimum mode. Business are closing. We have seen all these symptoms during the COVID and post-COVID as well. But what we are now seeing that many people who took loans during the COVID, now they are getting the defaulter and losing their assets. So, but today we are basically talking about the external debt crisis, especially the country, our governments who took loan from external sources. But this loan, basically people is the owner and they have to basically return this loan, either through taxation or other production-oriented works. So that's why this issue is very much people's issue. However, people have very limited say on how government basically decides to take loan and how they want to really address the debt crisis. So basically, we also thinking that if we cannot manage this crisis, we will go towards a recession, because recession is usually last couple of months, and this is like a little bit continuous stagflation issue. But if we cannot manage the recession, then we will see widespread unemployment and massive debt increment in the countries and the decline of GDPs. And that means then we will go towards depression, and that will last a few years. So if we have to really address this issue, we have to start now. And that's why people's fight back is a very important in this context. So let me, next slide, please. So let me explain a little bit about how Asia Pacific region is currently having. We all know that this region basically having a climate crisis for a long time, and then the COVID came. So this dual crisis creates a big burden over the countries in the region. And now we are getting this economic crisis. And this crisis partly also linked with the COVID mismanagement, and also the incapacity of the government, and also the residual impact of the bad economic decision and the debts over the last decade. If we consider the economic crisis of Sri Lanka, it doesn't happen in a single day, although it looks like that it's a very quick phenomenon. Basically, this happened because Sri Lanka did a lot of mega projects and took a lot of loan from the external sources, like China, India, Asian Development Bank, or other international financial institutions. So what happens when you take, there is a time you have to return this debt. And if you don't have the money to return that, then the economic crisis starts. And that happens in the Sri Lanka, and that may happen in the whole Asia Pacific region, because most of the time we have seen that we are taking external loan for the mega projects, whether that is economically sustainable or not, because we don't really count that how long it will take to repair the debt. So this kind of poor economic management is basically creating this economic crisis in the whole region. And interestingly, there was a forecast that there will be a kind of a economic growth will be around 4.6% in 2022, but the inflation will be 4.2% in the region. But currently the inflation is 5.5%, and it could go up to 7%. So that means we are basically heading towards a recession, not only living in a stagflation situation, the region, but we are heading towards a recession. At the same time, this region is basically burdened with conflicts. If you see at the Myanmar, if you see Afghanistan, Palestine, and what happens, these conflicts not only limited within the countries, these conflicts basically spreads and impacts the surrounding countries, the neighboring countries. So they also have to take the burden of that conflict as well. So that means geopolitically, this region is also is getting in crisis. And if we see the current situation where we see the military tension, for example, China, Taiwan, that is escalating, and that also creating opportunity for the arms traders. So while in a way we are struggling, people are struggling. At the same time, arms sale is increasing in the region. And I told you already that climate is a big challenge, and Pakistan has exhibited recently that how massive this challenge could be. Here also, I would like to emphasize that often nowadays our governments, they try to hide behind this economic crisis, climate crisis. Because climate change is, of course, is the key reason for this kind of massive flood. But also, the land grabbing is a big issue for the escalation of this flood region, because naturally there is a land area that is called floodplain, and usually we should really intake that. But what happened due to the excessive government development projects and land grabbing, often this area is not protected. So that means, along with the climate crisis, our poor governance and this kind of economic opportunism will increase our crisis. It will turn into an emergency situation that already we have seen in the Pakistan context. At the same time, we also see basically during the COVID situation that there's an unholy nexus of politicians, military, and corporations. And that nexus basically reduced the civic space. At the same time, we have also seen that official development assistance is also not getting in properly in the region. Next slide, please. Yes, donors are telling that the official development assistance has increased 4.4% from the previous year. But if we exclude the COVID-19 vaccine aid, it only increased 0.6%. And donors are still struggling or not willing to fulfill their 0.7% gross national income commitment. Currently, they managed to succeed 0.33% only. And here, I would say that this COVID-19 vaccine, what they donated, majority of that was not basically is like a primary choice of donation. It is basically the residues that they have that they donated to the countries. So this is also a mindset issue of the donors as well. And although they have given ODA around 180 billion, but more than 85% is in loan, not in grant format. So that means this ODA, whatever comes, it also creating a debt burden in the region as well. Next slide, please. So here we said how the debt crisis is basically in the Asia Pacific region. Basically, we have seen that 60% of the low-income countries in the world are now in a debt distress. And majority of these countries are in the Asia Pacific region. So in that context, we can say 80% of the Asia Pacific is somehow in debt distress. And economic crisis is increasing if we look at the basically either the sovereign loan default or the inflation rate. The Sri Lanka basically, they have loan default is 78 million, but that is their 87% of their GDP. So it means if the GDP and debt ratio is higher, then the crisis will escalate. Pakistan has more than 250 billion debt. And Pakistan's inflation rate currently is around 38%. It was basically 21% in June 2020. So very quickly it's rising. Rest of the other countries, inflation rate is from 5.5% to 7.5%. But some countries have very high rate. For example, Lebanon, 168% inflation rate. So the Asia Pacific country are living with hyperinflation. Next slide, please. And now, basically, who is playing the key role? This debt crisis is basically reviving the post-Washington consensus. In fact, it is reinforcing the role of World Bank and IMF and putting again the risk of structural adjustment in the region. In fact, the IMF is already putting a lot of work to provide further new loans to the countries. They are talking with Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, other countries as well. So we are assuming there will be a new policy engineering in the region. At the same time, will be a new debt burden over these countries as well. And this reform will basically not will strengthen people. It will strengthen the private sector. It will weaken the state. It will weaken the people's struggles. Next slide, please. And we have seen that there is a debate in the G20, the debt service suspension initiative, so that the debt distressed countries can get some relief. But ultimately, this is not going according to the people's demand. Rather, it is basically suspending only the bilateral loans, not the multilateral loans tied with this World Bank or IMF. And IMF is telling that they are a financial institution. They cannot really grant everything for free. So we see that there will be not a big opportunity to get debt relief through this debt service suspension initiative. Rather, they are trying to promote new form of bonds to put more pressure on the debt stressed countries. Next, please. So, if we say that what is the basically the root causes of this crisis, it's basically, in a word, it's the neoliberalism, because their policy or paradigm weakened the people's regime, weakened the democracy, weakened the state power, only to reinforce or enforce the private sector and corporate power, the power of the financial institutions. So, and also we have seen the power of IMF and World Bank means basically the power of United States. They have wielded major power over both these institutions. And we can see that dollar is still enjoying relatively better situation than other currencies because of the US hegemonic role over these institutions. And it will continue if people don't start fight back against this hegemony.
Masum, you have like 3 minutes left, so please wrap up.
Okay, thank you. And what thing we can expect that the official development assistance and donors, they could really change the situation or help this debt distress. Unfortunately, still they are following their old strategic geopolitical interest during disbursing the aid. So it will not really reduce the crisis. Rather, in some cases, it will exploit and escalate the crisis, and it will continue environmental and climate crisis like the flood in Pakistan. Next slide, please. And finally, I would like to say that whatever the crisis in this region, what it will happen, it will impact on the people, so that people have to pay more taxes. They have to spend more money to buy basic stuff for their food, their health services. And the governments of this region, they will spend less for the public services, for education or healthcare. So ultimately, and the government has to accept IMF and World Bank conditionalities. So that means there will be weak government capacity. Next, please. I think that will be my last one.
Yeah.
So we have nothing except to strengthen people's movement, to challenge these conditionalities, to address this crisis. We are highly hopeful that the Sri Lankan protest has shown that if people are really united, a change is possible. And we have seen that people are protesting all over the Asia Pacific region, in Philippines, in Bangladesh, in Pakistan, against this crisis. And they demanded rights, not the conditionalities. Thank you very much.
Okay, that was great, Masum, and thank you for clarifying the current situation of high debt and stagnant growth and inflation. While the capitalists are talking about what is the safest bet during this tumultuous time, either bonds or stocks or currencies, the working people are missing meals and basic needs, and our children are going hungry due to the rising prices of fuel and basic commodities brought about by debt and inflation. So I remind to everyone, if you have any question or comments, please type your question and comments in the chat box. So now now to hear the situation in Pakistan and in the Philippines, we have here our guests, Wali and Elmer. And Wali Haider is from Pakistan and has worked with peasants and the people of Pakistan for decades. He is also the director of Roots for Equity, CSO based in Pakistan. While Elmer Labok has been engaged with the workers' movement both in the Philippines and globally, and is the chairperson of the Kilusang Mayo Uno or KMU in the Philippines. Wali, life has become harder in life has become harder in Pakistan due to the massive floods. Are you expecting more borrowing because of the recent disaster? And what have been the policies of the international finance institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank Group that are imposed on Pakistan when it borrows from these groups? So, Wali, we're waiting for your response.
Thank you, Hani. Thank you very much for the organizer to inviting us to share some of our concern with respect to the climate crisis recently happening in Pakistan in the shape of flood and heavy rains. You might know that till now thousands of farmers, especially rural communities, been heavily affected by the super flood and the monster monsoon. They named it monster monsoon by now. So we are really in a crisis-like situation these days, and this is because of, as you all know, that we come up with a statement, and we are convinced, and there are evidence that the recent climate crisis, the heavy rain and the flooding, is because of the climate crisis. And the main responsibility lies in the hand of the G7 countries, particularly USA, which are more responsible for emitting carbon emissions and other fossil fuel. Whereas countries like Pakistan has been contributing less than 1%. So in that term, the impact are aggravated in third world countries, particularly a country like Pakistan. And among those, the rural communities are the most affected one. There are standing crops of cotton, rice, vegetables, sugarcane, and many others been all wiped out. And say they somehow in the first instance able to save their livestock, but now with the heavy standing water, the livestock is being getting affected, and now there is a heavy attack of mosquitoes. Thousands of livestock have been died because of these issues. The only source for their livelihood was living with the livestock, but now it's also been depleting. And the situation seems worse day by day, rather to have some solution, because of the negligence and non-serious attitude by the state government and also by the central government. There are not much serious effort we have seen, particularly in areas which have been heavily affected in the past 1-2 weeks. So this is the issue related to the recent crisis which is happening in Pakistan. So that's why I'm sorry that Dr. Azra was supposed to speak in this forum, but she has to rush to the field. So I have been asked to replace her. With respect to the economic situation, the World Economic Forum report has termed Pakistan debt crisis as the top risk facing the country, and they have explained that this is because of the ruling elite, politicians, civil and military bureaucracy, and the business community. They did not put the main actor of this economic crisis, particularly the G7 countries and the role of international financial institutions. But the recent economic crisis, as Masum has mentioned, there is a quite hype of Sri Lankan economic crisis because they have been declared bankrupted. Pakistan's situation is not different than Sri Lanka. So a week before, we only had $7-8 billion of foreign reserve, which is only enough for 1 week of oil purchasing. So we are really in a very chaotic and serious situation economically. And as Masum has mentioned, that there is a total debt of 250 billion, and the inflation raised by 38%. It's quite a lot. And these inflations is just because of the IMF conditionalities, which has been put in place to us in last 3 months only. We had a bailout package by IMF in July 2019 for 36 months. In total, since inception of Pakistan, we had 22 IMF packages, but these 22 IMF packages never able to get rid of the debt crisis. Rather, it's been enforcing and been more diving into a deep sea of debt crisis in case of Pakistan. So recent crisis emerged in July 2022 when that time government, Imran Khan-led government, been toppled by no confidence motion, and IMF decided not to release the agreed remaining $3 billion because the ongoing bailout package we started July 29 was $6 billion package, and by June 2022 we got $3 billion, and they were saying that unless or until Pakistan will do certain structural policy changes, especially in finance, they will not going to release the rest of the $3 billion. Then there is a rush by the current government to fulfill IMF demand, which is very harsh. Earlier, in IMF demand, our central bank has been autonomized, and that time headed by one of the earlier Egypt World Bank head, Raza Baka, and IMF has forced Pakistan to autonomize the central bank. So now the central bank is autonomous. They are not bound to under the policy of the central government, and they have the June budget, the last budget, been mainly prepared by IMF and handed over to Pakistan, and they have put in place heavy taxes on electricity, on gas, on petrol, on all of sorts of the basic necessities. Hence, the inflation is now 38%, as Masum has also mentioned. No? So it's 38%, but most of the population's income is not been raising. So especially the farmers, the rural communities, and the working class is in a very dire kind of a situation. It's especially people living in slums and in cities. Urban poor are facing hard time to fulfill their basic necessity. Just to understand the gravity, for instance, my electricity bill was supposed to be 1,800 to 2,200 per month. This time, my bill was 7,500. So now they put a petroleum levy in our bill. So that is imposed by IMF, and the fuel prices will increase 150 to 250, now to 35, 150 to 35 is a huge rise in fuel prices.
Okay.
And if fuel prices have raised, then everything has to be have to be risen. So in such a dire situation, the cost of living, the cost of production, especially for farmer, for fertilizer, for seeds, for everything been also rise, and the rural communities are facing a critical situation. For us, the US imperialist policies are responsible for the acute economic disaster facing not only Pakistan, but many new colonial countries. Instead of happening in genuine liberation of country, they use the IMF and the World Bank to keep a suffocating grip of our economies, pushing us deeper and deeper into societal debt trap while maintaining their colonial relation with our ruling elite.
Yes.
Who of course cannot be absolved by responsibility of the semi-colonial, semi-feudal nature of our countries. Is pertinent to remind ourselves that in Pakistan, only 5% of very rich feudal families own 64% of agricultural land. Indeed, a very quick way of overcoming the issue of this economic and both climate crisis is to carry out a genuine agrarian reform. However, neither the rich capitalist countries nor the state are interested in genuine solution leading to national liberation and sustainable development. I'm not sure how much time I left, but I can talk more on the both economic and climate crisis. But I just also want to mention the issue of China with respect to
Oh, yeah.
Pakistan. So it's there is a huge infrastructure project called Pakistan China Economic Corridor (CPEC). So it's
Okay.
it's an $80 billion
So-
infrastructure project.
Wally, you can continue your explanation later in the question and answer session, because like your time is up, and I'm going to go to Elmer first to ask about the Philippine situation. So Elmer, Philippines is not unfamiliar with disaster, and your country has incurred a lot of debt for climate financing, as well as record high borrowing during the COVID pandemics. Is the new administration conducting austerity measures to be able to pay off these debts?
Yes, before I answer the question, I'd like to greet all the participants in this significant webinar. Thank you, Hani. And as I was listening to the presentation of Hazan Masun and Wali Hader, it looks like I was listening to the situation that is prevailing in the Philippines right now. Seems the situation in the Asia Pacific region are entirely related, and that in a global context, the working class is the primary victim of these neoliberal impositions in our various societies. So this discussion is very timely in a sense that we are in a period where the budget deliberation of the current Marcos II administration is being discussed in the lower house of Congress, and that we have launched uh, three general mobilizations in the Parliament to express our disgust on the manner by which this government has been treating its budget, and quite obviously, these are monies and taxes that comes from the people, and therefore the even the president of the Philippines do not have the absolute right to do or to put the money where he wants it. It should be the voice of the people should be heard on where these monies should be placed in the budgeting of the various needs of people in the Philippine economy. Uh, the Marcos government had inherited the 12.9 trillion pesos of debt from its predecessor, the Duterte government. Uh, this has really uh, ignited that amount from a very small debt of 5.9 trillion during the time of Aquino. And this has been incurred by the Duterte administration, 12.9 trillion, in the excuse of using the money for the during the pandemic when the COVID-19 struck in our economy. So 12.9 trillion is the equivalent of 232 billion US dollars. It had been mentioned that it's one of the highest debt that one any of the countries in the Asia Pacific region had, although next to Sri Lanka, next to Pakistan and other Asian countries. So this is a very high amount of debt, which will be charged to be paid by the Filipino people. We have 110 million population as of the current time, as of the present, and this redounds to a debt of 2,057.42 US dollars per individual in the Philippines. So this is the present amount that each of our citizens have to pay in the future. So while the days goes forward, then this debt would increase as the interest payments would also increase. However, the Marcos government had its wrong priorities uh, in assigning the budget to the programs of government. For example, it had devoted a bigger amount to the fascist structures, that instead of giving the monies to social services, it had given priority and preference to the build program of the Duterte government. It had given priority to the Department of National Defense and the police and the dreaded NTF-LCAC, which is an institution that attacks almost all of society, the sectors in Philippine society. So we had a debt budget of 5.03 from the past administration, and this has been increased higher by only 4.9%, or the equivalent of 5.268 trillion. Even the budget for the Department of the Labor and Employment has been substantially decreased, because from an amount of 52.1 billion in the past government, it had been reduced to 41.9 billion, or lesser than almost 10 billion pesos. So it's a huge error to prioritize projects that really do not redound to services for the people. They reduce the social protection programs, especially with the COVID still in an upsurge in the Philippines. So you will take note that Duterte had incurred 12.9 trillion debt with excuse of using this amount in combating the COVID-19. But as it shows now, every time that there is an upsurge since the start of the pandemic, the usual solution that the Duterte government would do is to impose lockdown in so many communities. So this means that the small and medium businesses could not function during the time of the COVID, and that it has been a very good excuse to increase debt. And we know that there were a lot of stealing that have been done in the revenue that should have been used for the benefit of the people. In the trade union movement, we have grouped ourselves to push for the basic demands, even in a claimed crisis that has been imposed upon us. We struggle for higher wages, which has not been really adjusted by the past government of Duterte. The struggle to fight for the junking of the contractualization scheme of government, and the struggle for better health and working conditions of workers, and lastly, to struggle for trade union and human rights of workers. As of now, there are 56 trade unions that had been killed, and if I know that you know about the killings that had happened, and in fact, there are 30 police officers who had been filed cases of criminal charges for the killing of Manny Asuncion during the last year during the reign of Duterte. And so, in ending, the imperialist countries and the international financing institutions impose their neoliberal policies upon us, namely liberalization, privatization, deregulation, and neoliberalization. And these are the sicknesses that we are suffering now, that are imposed by by these powers. So in times that we have a boom in the economy, they withhold the profits and the wealth. But in times like this, where there is a great crisis, they pass on the crisis to the masses of the world, and especially the fighting people in all regions of the globe. So, as usual, we must do mass actions to really affect change in our society. And the inspiration and experience recently of our Sri Lankan brothers and sisters would serve as inspiration. And in ending, I'd like to express solidarity to the Pakistani people for the sufferings that they are having now due to the climate change that had been the crimes of imperialist countries and their cohorts. Thank you very much for lending your ears.
Thank you, Elmer, for your response. No, I'm just like it's just like a reminder for everyone. We're only taking the question from the chat box. So if you have any question and comment, please type it down in the chat box. Jadi kalau teman-teman punya pertanyaan bisa tulis di chat box ya. So this is I think this I will like ask the last question for Wally and Elmer. And then Wally and Elmer, what are your efforts in organizing resistance against the impositions of the IFIs against the working people of your countries? And is this the way forward for us in tackling the debt and inflation problems? So maybe like you can have like a 2 minutes each to answer this question. Is that okay?
Yeah. Can I start?
Wally and Elmer, are you there?
Yes. Can I?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Wally.
So, in response to the crisis I had mentioned, we had various strategies to resist that. At one hand, there is a mass organization called Pakistan Kisan Mazdoor Tehreek and also Equity jointly, are in campaign since many years regarding this new liberal financial policies by the capitalist imperialist countries. So there is a campaign of genuine agrarian land reform, and there is a campaign of food sovereignty. There is a mobilization for self-sufficient economy, and many farmers and urban too are a part of that. And there another strategy is to come up with analysis and critique to these new liberal policies, especially in the case of current economic crisis. We formed a think tank called Pakistan Institute of Political Economy, which are going to take up the real people's solutions to these imperialist policies, especially by the IMF and the World Bank. Our policy analysis paper is under process. And for the new liberal agriculture capitalist policies, we had various campaign like Save Our Seed campaign, agroecological based agriculture farms establishment to just show that the only the external input, the chemical agriculture, corporate agriculture is not only the way to feed yourself. There are other ecological food sovereignty based methods communities can apply to have self sufficiency in agriculture, food and agriculture production. On the other hand, there is also a massive campaign against transnational corporation, for instance, particularly on Monsanto, because they have influenced our seed laws, and we have gone into the High Court to repeal the law which is facilitating corporations, those who try to introduce genetically modified seeds in our food and agriculture. So there is a protest campaign and mobilization apart from have a critical analysis and have a mass mobilization or the education part as well. So in a sense, people are now because as I mentioned, economically situation is really aggravated. Now people can see how these very instrument by IFIs can affect their life, and it seems that there is a more engagement. There is a more need for peoples to come together, and as Elmar mentioned, there is no other way out to just stand up and a massive mass mobilization against this imperialist capitalist policies, which is harming our life. Thank you, Annie.
Okay. So how about Elmer?
Yeah, it's undeniable that we are all in a very precarious situation brought about by imposition upon us, which is not, which policies are not really pro people. A lot of workers do not have enough wages, especially with the severe global crisis brought about by the almost weekly increase in the price of oil and petroleum products, which we know is being controlled and being played by the monopoly capitalists or the so-called cartels. Uh, but then, as I mentioned, we should be able to understand on a global context this crisis and what is happening to the various sectors of our own respective societies. So, exchange of ideas and analysis of the ongoing crisis is a very important endeavor, especially sponsored by progressive groups in various countries. It is important that we ourselves understand what is happening in order to impart to our people the serious understanding and in order to mobilize our people. So we agitate the ranks uh, and what is, I think, important in this point at this point in time is to organize the various sectors of society, primarily to struggle for our basic issues, for higher wages, better working conditions, our rights as productive forces of society, our rights as people in our respective countries against the impositions of various imperialist powers. And we all have our peculiarity in our struggles, and that we are not starting from scratch. We are not starting just now. So our own struggles in our respective countries are our contributions to the global struggle against this imposition by international imperialist institutions like IMF, World Bank, ADB, who in the future would be having their conferences also. 26 starting September 26, the ADB Board of Governors will be having their conference right here, and I understand early September in Washington D.C. IMF and World Bank will be holding the conference, and it's also a consolidation on their part to gain more profit in the for the in exchange for the detriment of the working people, and that we must go against these further impositions that would create more difficulties in our rank. So it's a matter of analyzing what's happening, understanding, organizing, and mobilizing our own sectors and our people in our respective countries. I think that's the formula that we all have to unite upon in order to affect changes, not only in our country context, but in a bigger global context. The situation calls for stronger and more enhanced international solidarity to affect change.
Well, thank you, Elmer and Wally. Great points raised by our guests. And now it is time for us to hear from our audience. So we are now opening the question and answer sessions. Kindly type your questions type your questions and reactions in the chat box. And while we are waiting for the others, we already have like two comments and questions. So I'll just like read it. Can someone help me to spotlight Masum as well? Okay. So okay, thank you. So this is the question from Hasbi Muhammad from Indonesia. How likely is it for Asian countries to get out of the oppressive like climate and economic crisis? And if possible, what concrete steps can be taken, especially by the grassroots? Do you have to fight like Islamic country that are massively fighting against the oppressive Western world, like Iran, for example? And thank you. Maybe we can like entertain this question first. Is Elmer, Wali, or Masum? Do you have any ideas or any opinion about this question?
Okay. You see, Iran is fighting, but Iran's inflation rate currently is 53%. So it's like they're under sanctions. So it's basically suffering the Iranian people, ordinary people. So that is kind of a, you can say, Western hegemony in a classic form. But what I think the root cause
Masum, are you there? Hello? Okay, I think, oh, Masum, are you there? Okay,
Yeah,
so just like,
yeah, I was cut out from
Yeah.
the right. So what we basically need the political education, because sometimes people don't understand the text clearly or the mechanism how the neoliberalism works. So basically, they know all the symptoms, they all know things, but they cannot relate. Maybe there is a gap, communication gap in that. So I think if we do the lot of dialogue with the people, this is the current crisis, and this is the reason for happening, and also educate each other. No, this provide opportunity to learn from each other. Then we can build a resistance. Because if we don't understand the root causes of the crisis, we cannot strategize. So I think the networks of the Asia Pacific regions, they should really go back with the people to, I think, strategize how to resist and learn with each other, because the context is changing very fast. Thank you.
Okay. So is there any other opinions like from Wally or Elmer? Just like the quick one before we go to the next question and response.
Can I say something?
Oh yeah.
So, as Almer was mentioned that for us the only solution is the organize and mobilize communities, the working class, the peasantry. Unless or until we organize them and there is a mass mobilization against these policies, there is no other way out of this crisis, because these monsters are there, and these monsters can only be destroyed by a joint effort of working class and politicizing them. And I somehow, to some extent, I agree with Masum that education, political education to the working class, and for building a solidarity and resistance movement on the devastating effect, because in all the region you can see now both the crisis, the economic crisis and the environmental crisis, both are there, and those affect being impacted to the majority of the working class of the world. And unless or until the working class of the world are not united, and there is a strong political mobilization against the situation, there are no other solution of doing research and going to advocacy. That going to there was a debate in Sri Lanka that Sri Lanka could go to IMF or could not to go to IMF. For me, there is no other option. Just option to there is the one option to that the masses of the world can get power on their hand and just throw out this capitalist, imperialist policies in the world. Thank you.
Okay. So Elmer, do you have anything to say? Like,
Yeah. Indonesia is one of the most populated country in the world, and this is where your strength lies. There are a lot of strong unions. There are a lot of people's organization in your country. We almost have the same character of society, a semi-colonial and semi-feudal one, and so we clearly understand that in a setup like this, the biggest number of the population would be the peasant, and second the workers. So you know quite easily where to plant your organizing efforts. It should be in the countryside, where the wealth of mineral wealth and the natural resources are located. And so I think it's a matter of starting from the organized forces to reach out to a big section of your people which hasn't been organized, and to affect mobilization by continuously organizing the various sectors. I understand we are equally in a very difficult situation, but the solution lies on the strength of our own people and the number in us, as the saying goes, in number there is always strength.
Okay, so yeah, thank you for your response. So this one we have like one comments related to the questions from Erpan Faryadi from Indonesia. So the only way to resist the debt burden is educating and organizing the people in our respective country. So I'll go to the next question by Robin from APRN. Let me check. So while IFIs present themselves as solution with their bailout packages, how should we hold them accountable for their past actions that have contributed to the current economic crisis? Any one of you wants to answer this question?
I will just give an example because in 1996, ADB started a project in Bangladesh.
Mm.
So that project is basically creating a problem for the local people, created waterlogging, created a problem for the Sundarban biodiversity and forest as well. So what happened, we have mobilized people and it took almost 10 years struggle. So, and finally ADB had canceled the project because when we tried this through our government is not taking any initiative because they are part of the mechanism as well. No, and ADB is saying that we are not an organization. We are only delivering the way your government's telling us. So that is kind of their strategy. So that we learn that it is basically you have to unite people and you have to ready for a longer time resistance. It will take time, but if people are united and committed, whatever the time it took, people will win. So I think in the economic crisis also, we have to try to unite people. Maybe this is an issue, it is linked with their everyday life. So maybe this is easier to even unite all of people from all over the country. Like the project we did against ADP, that was difficult. But I think we have to unite people and we have to be committed for a longer struggle. Thank you.
Can I
Okay,
come
so-
in on this question?
Yes, sure, Wali.
So that I was saying earlier that the very presumption that bailout can only be possible by the IMF loan, that is a huge, objectionable conception. Currently, many countries are dependent on IMF loan because of their historical role of giving us loans. For instance, this current bailout package is the 22nd bailout package. So IMF need to check themselves that what happened to the earlier 21 bailout packages. Pakistan has to come out of this debt trap if the IMF loans are the solution. It's not. Basically the IMF is paving way for putting countries into that trap, because for instance, in case of Pakistan, this is only $6 billion, is a peanut for us. $6 billion, but the way they function, that the Paris Club and the Asian Development Bank and many other private or institutional donor don't give you loan unless you qualified by the IMF loan. So those are much bigger loans. So hence the countries are into a serious critical debt trap because of the very IMF role. So IMF loan is not a solution. So that this presumption need to be very clearly understand. Secondly, these loans are not used for the development of the society and the country. These loans mostly goes into again giving payback the interest of this loan, and then they devalue our currency, so that the loan is for instance 2 billion, and your country your rupee devalue without any transaction, the dollar, the payable amount has been increased. So that's how there is a cycle of a debt trap we are into. And we need to be very, this is not a rocket science and this is not a scientific thing. How we are, been into $250 billion debt on Pakistan. How is possible if IMF is giving us loan all through this inception, no? So it's the part of the problem, because but it's the cause of the problem, IMF. So the only solution is to strengthen the local industry, for mass production, and so that the majority our labor can be induct in our industry, the production can increase in a massive manner. But these IMF conditionalities put into place in our economies that our industry cannot grow. So that's how they strategize their functions. And we need to understand that without going out of the IMF trap, we can't have any solution. So going to IMF is not a solution.
Okay, so Elmer, do you have any thoughts about this?
Yeah, the bailout plan that are being offered by these international financial institutions add up to the crisis. They do not even have the single seriousness to resolve the crisis that they have created. Instead, they connive with existing governments to maintain the status quo. For example, to maintain a deepening agricultural backward country that would be always willing to affect loans from these international financial institutions. Loans that are laden with conditionalities and programs that would assure interest as well as principal payments. And so, even before loans from these institutions could be released, governments would come out with a plan, drawn out plan that would guarantee the return of investments of these institutions. So usually the increase of taxes that would be imposed on people to assure that the payments of loans would be guaranteed. And so you see programs where even the increase of taxes in oil and the petroleum products in many countries are increased perpetually to guarantee these loan payments. And so we should crave for the stop of these erroneous one-sided loans that are being imposed in our countries to maintain the status quo, and therefore to continue good business with the connivance on whoever is in government.
Okay, so we have like another question from Pelikan is Mailova, director of the Human Rights Movement Virtuino Kyrgyzstan. What are main opportunities or areas for optimism facing Asia Pacific region in the next 3 years? Anyone wants to answer this question? So what are main opportunities or areas for optimism facing Asia Pacific region in the next 3 years? Anyone, Elmer, Wali, or Masu?
Yeah.
If no one is responding, can I try?
Yeah.
Okay. You see, the opportunities are arising. For instance, this climate crisis, flood and monster monsoon, no, in Pakistan.
Mm.
It's our perspective, how we turn situation into opportunity. No, for instance, we are engaging our communities, not just giving them ration or food package, or built hand pumps, or giving them mosquito nets, but we are also trying to talk to them the reasons of this cyclic flood and rains, no?
Mm.
The reasons of, because the issue of climate crisis have not been gone into the communities till yet, though they are facing the situation, no, the impact. But they mostly, no, in Muslim culture, they think this is a what say, I'm sorry, the something imposed by the God, no,
Mm.
because of your sin. It's not something, it's man-made crisis, created by the imperialist corporations from the imperialist countries. And out of that, they take trillions of dollars of profit, and we gone into a debt trap of trillions of dollars, and our livelihood had been destroyed. So that's how we need to you see, turn the crisis into opportunity, to engage and to educate and to have a joint mobilization. No,
Mm-mm.
so there is a tremendous, for instance, you see in India what happened. The farmers of India stood up by this fascist regime of Modi, and they got succeeded. What happened in Sri Lanka recently of this economic crisis? The Sri Lankan people got stood up, and they resisted, and then they thrown out the government. No, so these are crises, but turn into opportunities. So there are a lot of the labor movement, mobilization, the peasant mobilization, the urban poor mobilization, the teachers mobilization. The things are going on, and just we need to be have a direction and culmination of these mobilization into a mass movement. Then I think we will have, inshallah, we will win this fight.
Okay, so any quick thought, Elmer or Masum?
Yeah.
Okay.
You see that after every crisis, there is an opportunity comes. So what basically this crisis shows, that if you are too much dependent on others for your food security, energy security, you will be in a crisis situation. So the governments who are in crisis, they are also learning these lessons, and they are thinking to change even. This is a high time, I would say, to change our agricultural policy, business, agriculture related trade policies, energy policies. Even in Bangladesh context, couple of months ago, our government was not very much willing for the renewable energy investments. Now they are really like trying to install as much as renewable energy setups, because they thought that if they have to buy oil in a higher price, they will be bankrupt like Sri Lanka future. So like a self-sufficiency, food sovereignty and energy sovereignty could be a new opportunity from this crisis. Without the like IFIs, what I think the countries who have the expertise, they should really have cooperation in the name of, for example, South-South cooperation, or even they can go for that triangular cooperation. So through this cooperation, they can reduce their debt. They can, because many of the money from the IFIs goes to the experts of designated by the IFIs. So I think this is an opportunity to recognize the value of farmers to address the crisis, the value of workers, to keep the supply chain intact. So that is the opportunity we have to highlight. This is a high time to recognize the role of the mass people in the economic survival of the country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for the active intervention of everyone. We know that you want to share more, but like we have like limited time. And now I would like to call Caroline to provide us with the closing remark. Caroline Muturi is the coordination of Ibon International Africa and is based in Kenya. Caroline, are you there?
Hello, yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, very clearly. Okay, so are you ready for
Okay,
your
good.
closing remarks?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
ready.
The time's yours.
All right. Thank you. Good afternoon, good evening from Nairobi, Kenya. My name is Caroline Muturi from Ibon Africa. I am representing Ibon International and Ibon Africa to give the closing remarks for this webinar. We are delighted for this opportunity to share on people's fight back on debt crisis and stagnation. First, we in Africa stand with the peoples of Asia Pacific in your fight back against the worsening crisis of monopoly capitalism in your region, especially in Pakistan and the Philippines. The ongoing heavy flooding in Pakistan has shown that the issue of southern debt cannot be divorced from the people's call for climate justice. Instead of loans that come with strings attached, climate finance to developing countries may be in form of grants. Here in Africa, we also have this challenge. Currently, 80% of all climate finance comes in the form of loans or private finance. For climate finance to be effective, it should be oriented towards the actual needs of developing countries and frontline communities. This entails urgent attention and funding for adaptation besides mitigation. Rights-based, people-powered solutions and practices should be fostered and implemented.
Oh,
Funding must move away.
sorry, can you turn on your video?
Okay.
Oh yeah, sorry for that. Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, great. You can
Thank
continue.
you. All right. So rights-based, people-powered solutions and practices should be fostered and implemented. Funding must move away from the present donor-controlled, corporate-driven climate finance system to realize the imperative of climate justice. Ultimately, the lasting solution to the climate, broader ecological crisis, and the economic crisis we are currently in is systemic change. The profit-driven and unsustainable models of growth under neoliberalism and monopoly capitalism must be abandoned. People's rights, sovereignty, including their right to the environment and also their resources, should be at the front and center of development. This can be achieved by democratizing ownership and control over resources, especially in agriculture, transportation, energy, and finance. Removing just economic and trade policies that inhibit developing countries' development and climate adaptation is necessary. For Asian and African peoples' needs to be fulfilled amid ecological crisis, communities and their mass movements and organizations need to be at the helm of social and economic governance. Our demands. We, as the civil society organizations, therefore call for cancellation of all erroneous debt of the countries of the South from international financing institutions, including the Asian Development Bank, the Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank Group. This will free up a share of southern countries' national budgets and contribute to additional finance that should be used to shift to sustainable development pathways. We also call for subsidies or other controls to restrain the prices of basic commodities and campaign for wage increases and to extend trade union organization. We also demand an end to austerity measures by governments and expansion of funding for private services, including free education and healthcare. We echo the people's demands to end regressive taxation regimes, begin taxing the rich, and move away from debt-funded public spending and towards progressive taxation-funded public spending. Lastly, we continue our call to end all neoliberal policies that are destroying the lives of the working people. The people's responses, depending on the political conditions, the people's responses can vary from wildcat protest through determined negotiation and on to political change and even to social revolution. Number two, workers also need to assert the political and social dimensions of their demands, insisting on a transition from capitalism to socialism. It is a struggle for social power that lies at the heart of this crisis. Long live international solidarity. Power to the people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Caroline. Okay, so I would like to send my gratitude to Caroline, Wally, Elmer, and Masum. And of course, thank you to all of you. And we are also encouraging everyone to sign People Over Profits sign-on statement, cancel all erroneous debt relief to the countries of the South. Link to the statement is on the chat box. You can check it right now. And thank you for everyone's coming in this webinar. And till the next webinar, goodbye for now.